Greetings and welcome to another Gwinnett County Public Library Introduction to Python video. Today what we're going to do is create a graphic user interface. So far in the videos we've created some code that just prints to the shell or the console, and what we want to do today is create something that resembles an application. As if you were to open an application, there's a spot to write some text and submit the text and then have an output. So there's multiple ways you can do this in Python. A very common module is Tkinter. You also may hear it refers to as Tkinter. I tend to say Tkinter, but Tkinter doesn't matter. And for this example, what we're going to do is take some code that we previously created in a video of checking on if a word is a palindrome. So we're going to use that code. So go back and watch that video, or if you save the file, go ahead and pull that up, or take a moment to pause the video and copy this code here. We're going to have this in our app, and then we're just going to tweak it. So let's get started. So first thing, I'm going to copy this, and I have a file for the palindrome app, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it, and remember how we can comment it out. But actually, before I comment it out, let's go ahead and run it, make sure it runs. So run, enter a word, we'll type in thunder. It is not a palindrome. I'm going to type in race car. Oh, yeah, I'm typing it into the console. We got to run it again. All right, race car. There we go. It is a palindrome. All right, so we know our code works. All right, so first thing we need to do, since we're using Tkinter, is we need to import it. And it's just like we've done in the past with importing random or importing time. We're just going to import Tkinter. Now, and this is the neat thing about Python, because anytime we use something from the Tkinter library, we would have to type in, tkinter.tk, things like that. But if we want to just create a shorter way to reference it, we can do that. So import Tkinter as tk. So now then, rather than having to write in Tkinter, every time we borrow something from the library, we can just reference tk. I'm going to go ahead and comment out this code. Remember, you can just do triple apostrophe or triple quote, whichever you like to do. Now, if I run it, nothing happens, right? Now, there's a few steps when you're creating a window or an app that you want to start with. The first thing I would do is actually create your box, and in order to do that, we're going to create, I'm going to call it window, and window will be equal to tk period tk open close parentheses. Okay, now if I run this and I go down to my dock, you'll see that we have a window, TK, but there's nothing inside of it. We actually have to create those widgets to put inside of it. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay, close it over here. I'll just quit. All right. So we have our window. So step one, create your window. Next, let's create a title for it, because right now it just said TK in the as the title of the window. So we can say window, period, title, open parentheses, what do we want to call it? Let's call it palindrome app. Okay, now let's run it. And if I move this to the side, you'll see that our app now is called palindrome app. So that is how you do that. Okay, so that's how I'll start out. We're just going to go step by step. Next, because you notice that when I hit run, it has a particular size. That's the default. So we can change that. So if I type in window, period, geometry, we can then say the dimensions. So I'm going to say 400 by 100. And you want to put all that in quotes. That's just the way Tkinter wants the parameter. So I'm going to run it. And now you see that it's changed. Okay. Cool, cool. So it's just a little wider. All right. So now we have our window the way we want it. So next thing we need to do is let's create a label, right? So this is just going to be like a sentence in the top of the app. We can just say what this is going to do. So let's create a label, and I'm just going to call it label 1 for now, okay? So label 1 equals tk period label. Now you got to make sure that label is capitalized, all right? And notice how we're using tk. tk is we're referencing Tkinter there. So label, open parentheses. Now we have some parameters we can use. The parameter we want to use is text. So we're going to do text, and I'm just going to call it palindrome app. Actually, I'm going to call it something different. So when you go back and look at the code, you'll be able to tell what's what, right? Like this is palindrome app is the title, and then the label is something different. So I'm just going to call this reverse a string app. Boom. There we go. Now, if I run it, you'll see that nothing happened, right? Well, we created the label, but we got to go the next step and actually tell it where we want it. And think of it as a grid, okay, with columns and rows. You can kind of visualize. Here, let me go ahead and run it. Visualize kind of like an Excel spreadsheet where you may have, you know, column A, column B, column C, column D, and then row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. Think of it that way, okay? So let's place this. So we'll say label 1, because we want to reference label 1, period, grid, and we want to tell it what column and what row. So I'm going to say column equals 0, row equals 0. Boom. Now let's run it. And now you see reverse a string app. Pretty neat. It's coming together. All right. So now let's create another label. Let's say, because what do we want the user to do? We want them to enter a word. So I'm going to say label 2 equals tk label. It's going to be the same thing as above, right? Text equals, and we'll say enter a word. And again, if we run it, it's not going to appear. We have to tell it where we want it to go. So let's do label 2 period grid, and let's do column equals 0, row equals 1. We'll just keep it simple. We'll place it right below it. So if I run it, ooh, what do we got here? Syntax error. What is our syntax error? Ah, let's see. I put a quote there. We don't need that. Okay, text. Run. Boom. Now we have enter a word. And by default, it's if you imagine those columns and rows, it centers the text, right? So if this was column 0, because it is, let's say the line was here, reverse a string app is the width of the cell, I guess you would say, of the column, and then enter a word is just centered. Okay. So now, because if I run this and a user clicks on it, well, they need a place to enter a word. So what do we need? We need an entry box. And the neat thing about Python is there's so many resources out there. So if ever you need to find out how do I create an entry box with Tkinter, well, you can Google it. Or, how do I create a button? Well, you can Google it. Because if you don't do it every day, even if you know how to do it, you may forget certain parameters or keywords, things like that. So now let's create our text box. So I'm just going to call it entry1 equals tk period entry open close parentheses. That right there is saying I want a box. And now we have to tell it where we want it. So entry 1 period grid, and then we need column equals 1. Let's move it to the side, and let's say row equals 1. Okay, that looks good. Let's run it. I haven't saved in a while. Let me save. Run it. Boom. Now we have a place where we can enter text, right? So I could type in race car, which would be a palindrome, hit enter, but nothing happens, right? Again, because we created an entry box, but we haven't said what to do. So there's a few things we need to do now. One, we need to create a button, right, to make it work. But also, we need to create functions that do what our program does, right? That actually initiates this. So first, let's just go ahead and create the button. Now, the button isn't going to do anything, so there's going to be some information that I leave out. But I'm just going to call it button1 equals tk period button, and say text equals submit. Okay. So we're just the text parameter we're putting in, and the next one is command equals, and then here is where we would put the function name. Okay, so I'm just going to type function name here. Okay, and then we're going to put that we want button1 grid. Let's do column 0 and row 2. Okay. Now, if I run this, we're going to get an error because function name is not defined, right? So what I want to do is just go ahead and comment out this, just these two pieces. And if you just want to comment out a line, you can do pound, hashtag, tic-tac-toe, whatever you want to call it. And now if I run it, then it completely ignores that, okay? We will get back to that, I promise. But we have our button set up. Okay, so I always like to put my functions first, define them. So I'm just going to put some space down here. And let's go ahead and make this window bigger. And let's create a function for the reversal. Okay, so I'm going to say def reversal. So we're just defining a function, reversal. We've done this in previous videos, creating functions. Make sure to put your colon at the end. And now we can actually borrow from our code here. All right, so we need our counter, we need our reversed word, and what else will we need? We'll need our loop, and actually, yeah, we just take everything here. So I'm just going to copy that. Well, everything except for the input. Okay. Just going to paste that. Now you got to make sure everything is indented over, okay? Whoop, we don't want to do that. Because all of this belongs in the function. There we go. Just going to, let's see. Yep, no errors. All right, good, good, good. So we have our reversal function. Now we need another function which is going to display the results. So I'm going to create another function. So def, I'm going to call it result display. And that's just what I want to call it. You can call it whatever you want. But we're going to do result equals reversal. Okay. And actually, here I have print reversed word. We need to change this, okay? We haven't discussed the difference between print and return yet, but now would be a good opportunity to do that. So we copied our code from before, but remember, we're not using the console anymore, or the shell. So we need it to actually return something. Think of it as you putting an input, it goes into a mystery box, and then something output. Okay, so I'm going to change this where it said print palindrome. I'm just going to change it to return. And what am I going to return? I'm going to return palindrome. Okay. And then let's see. And then we have our else here. We have another print statement. So we need to return reversed word. And let's see, let's see, reversed word, palindrome. Actually, we didn't create a variable for palindrome, so let's go ahead and create that. This will make things cleaner. We'll use some concatenation. So let's do, because one thing that we didn't do is get the um, get uh, the text from the text box. So that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to say, we'll do this. We'll say word, which is our entry. And in order to get the information from the entry box, we're going to do str parentheses entry 1, because that's the name of our box, right? Get, and there we go. All right. So now this is whatever's entered in the entry box. Next thing, I'm just going to create a message that says um, uh, like blank is a palindrome, right? So I'm going to say palindrome equals word. so whatever they typed in, plus is a palindrome. Okay. And now let's look at our code, while counter less than word. And again, you can review the video on the checking on a palindrome on our YouTube. But just making sure everything makes sense. We have reversed word, if reverse word, return palindrome, else return the reversed word. Okay, and then here we want to else return, and then we actually don't need to do print here. Okay. So going back to our result display function, we have result display, and result is going to be equal to the output here. So whatever is returned, whether it's palindrome, which is our concatenation over here, or the reversed word, that's what's going to be result. So let's create a place for the result. So I'm going to say result window is equal to tk text and master. This is the window, right? We're referring to the window we created, because in some apps you're going to have multiple windows, right? So the window we want, we need the size. We're going to say height equals 10, and width, let's make it twice as so we'll do 20. That should be enough. And then we need to place it on a grid. So result window period grid, and column, let's put it at column 0 so it's under everything, but then to the right. Column 0, yeah, and then row 3 to make it under everything. Okay. And then we need to insert, so we'll do result window period insert, and then what are we inserting? So we got tk period end, and then the result, right, which is whatever the output of reversal was. Okay. Functions look good. Let's go back now and think about our button. So what we want to do when we click on the button is actually run this result display, because then the first thing it's going to do is take it's going to run reversal, assign it to the result, and then place it where we want it. So bum, 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 bum. Now this is where it's really interesting. You would think that you would put this in quotes, but you don't. You just put the function name. So I'm going to type in result display, and now our button does something. Ideally. All right. We did a lot without testing it, so cross your fingers. We may have to debug, but we'll run it. All right. So now we have our app, reverse a string app, enter a word, type in race car, hit submit. Race car is a palindrome. So our box isn't large enough. So let's go to our result window. That's what this is here, right? And let's make the width 30. And we'll try it again. Run, enter a word, race car, and submit. Race car is a palindrome. Awesome. Now let's type in another word. Let's type in thunder and submit, and it just reversed it. All right, because technically we just did reverse a string app. But what we could do actually, and this is something I'll let you explore, is just like we created palindrome equals word plus is a palindrome, see if you can go ahead and make the output when it's not a palindrome to say the word and then is not a palindrome. So I hope you enjoyed this. Now we're getting into next level stuff, being able to use more modules and create graphic user interfaces. I hope you enjoyed. And also, what you should do is take a look at the Caesar Cipher video and go ahead and make that an app. That's a nice challenge. All right. Well, I hope y'all had a good one. Be sure to subscribe to Gwinnett County Public Library's YouTube for more videos. Have a great day.